Hi, it's Alexander Russo from The Grade, and this is the Education Show, and I'm here today with Dan Meyer. Dan, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
As some people may know, and I have learned over the last couple of months, you are Mr. Ed Tech. That's my name for you, not your name for you. You're a former math teacher. You're at Amplify now. You've done a bunch of things, and you run the popular Substack Math Worlds. Is that correct?
That's all right. Yeah, more ed than tech, but I've found my way to a marriage of both over the years.
Okay, we are here in the summer of 2026, and something's going on. I don't know what to call it or how we got here. What should we call it, and how did we get here?
I mean, there's names out there like the techlash, the digital backlash. I've been thinking about it lately as something like an immune reaction, where the body that consists of ed tech and schooling has not developed sufficient antibodies towards ed tech hype and ideas that don't work. And parent communities have come along to give the whole system an infusion of antibodies to do what it hasn't done for itself. That's a bit of how I'm thinking about it right now.
Okay, so I don't know anything about medicine, but the white cells attack the invader. Is that how it works?
That's roughly how I get it. I'm married to a nurse, and that's the extent of my knowledge. But yeah, it really feels like a lot of the systems surrounding kids have not been doing a good job of filtering out lousy ideas, which has led to a lot of quote unquote sickness inside that system where kids are using tools that don't work, that are cognitively de-skilling them. And then these parent communities have said, okay, this is not working. We will come along and provide the jolt of white blood cells or immunoglobulins or whatever it is that this system so badly needs right now.
I like the medical metaphor a lot. I've been talking about schools as soft targets for hype
Yes.
and vendors, but that's a little bit too militaristic. So let's go with the immune response. Are you experiencing this parent reaction, this counter reaction yourself? Are you seeing it or experiencing it?
Certainly, as an ed tech vendor, as a company trying to build experiences for kids with technology, we see a lot of parents that are like have more scrutiny than ever before on like what kind of experience is this? Is this an experience that's actually valuable for our kids, or is it one of the experiences that have been heavily hyped but ultimately amounts to quite little that we've seen a lot of recently?
And has this resulted either for you immediately or in the world of ed tech, to your knowledge, are people opting out? Are they non-renewing? Are they not buying? Are they canceling?
I couldn't speak to specific sales data, but I do know from having been on the road and chatting with, giving pitches in front of districts and boards and other kinds of groups that the questions that come in are of a different character than they were 5 years ago. Much more about like, so what do students do on devices? And when parents ask, like, how is AI involved here? It is a very interesting question to wonder, like, what is their angle? Are they excited about AI and its presence in a system, or are they like looking to make sure that it's not in that system? Is really the state of the art right now in the landscape.
And most of the time, just based on your experiencing, are they excited about the prospect that there's AI in what you're talking about, or are they worried?
They are almost entirely worried. No one seems to be quite all that excited to hear, yeah, we have a heavy AI component, which we at Amplify, we do not. We've moved very slowly in terms of integrating AI into our products. I led the development of our first AI feature, and it was very, very pedagogically oriented and emerged from problems of practice that I was experiencing as a user of our products. And so that's this one feature we have that is opt-in for teachers versus opt-out. So, and we find that parent groups and customers are very assured by having that kind of product DNA and also the ability to opt in or opt out ad hoc.
When you and I were emailing in preparation for this conversation, you made a really interesting and important distinction that I don't think I, frankly, was paying enough attention to, which had to do with teacher or instructor experience versus kid experience. So, for example, when you're talking about the AI component that you added as an opt-in, that was on the teacher side, or that was on the kid side, or both?
Right, it's on the teacher side. So we just noticed that in our system, our product, kids will receive interesting questions or interactives, and they'll respond with interesting mathematical responses, a few sentences about this or that, which the teacher then sees and has to like process in real time. 30 responses, very interesting. And we found that AI was a very useful partner for the teacher to help them analyze those responses and create dynamically a discussion resource, which they could use or not use, but was more than they had without it. But none of that touches, none of that is experienced by the kid directly. Mm-hmm. It's mediated by the teacher, which if you want to like think about the kinds of AI tools that have been so heavily hyped, but have delivered so little, those have oftentimes misunderstood the relationship between kid and grown up in classroom and said, hey, we can make the AI kind of function a little like a grown up, like a tutor, like a teacher. And those tools we've just seen over the last 4 years, students have just smashed those with a return to sender, just dreadful usage rates, dreadful effect sizes. And that's why we work so closely. This technology moves through and with the teacher, not directly to the student.
I like to say, or maybe someone said to me, that everyone gets their turn in the barrel, meaning everyone gets their chance to be subject to a lot of scrutiny. I certainly have, maybe you have. Right now, it's iReady, it's a Chromebook one-to-one program implementations, and maybe YouTube access. First of all, are those the folks that are on the hot seat right now? And also, to the best of your understanding, are those folks whose usage by kids should be reconsidered or audited?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the main thing that I see that people want, that parents cherish about their own education and that kids cherish about theirs, is relationship with other people, with the teacher, with other students. And when I think about all the different tools and companies that wind up in the hot seat with a lot of scrutiny, they wind up being the tools that minimize those kinds of human relationships, that have kids doing different things on devices from one to another, or that separate them from the teacher, where the teacher's like, okay, my kids just turned into a dashboard. Like, my kids are now a line graph on a screen. I don't know them as humans. And it shouldn't need to be said, but parents hate that and want much better for their kids, which again is why we build our tools to work with and through teachers. Like, without teachers enacting our tools and facilitating our curriculum and pacing and pausing and orchestrating, our tools are nothing. And that's important to us, and why I think we are going to avoid a lot of the scrutiny and backlash that's currently present in the industry.
So it's one thing, tell me if my paraphrase is on or off. So it's one thing to give teachers tools that help them analyze or do back office. I'm thinking about Scantrons way back in the day when someone developed the thing that let the scores tests get scored so quickly. It's one thing there. It's another thing if the technology gets in the way of the student teacher relationship. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, the tool I mentioned, kids and teachers will have a stronger relationship and better learning, but a stronger relationship through the use of that tool, because the teacher is seeing these student responses dynamically and saying, oh, here's these responses. This one's wrong, but super interesting. Let's talk about it, which is a fundamentally bonding experience with the teacher and a kid, the kind that parents desire for their kids.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I have to say, I'm as worried about teachers checking out on the classroom process as I am about kids checking out. I don't know if there's any evidence that this is happening. It certainly seems safer to start with teacher-focused ed tech or AI. But I do worry that it's a slippery slope where the teacher's not. If part of a teacher's job is to study the kid and learn the kid, I do worry a little bit about that. Maybe that's an unwarranted worry.
I think that's a really valid worry. I think it's a great way to articulate the job of a teacher, to be a student of the kid, a student of the student, is really well put. And yeah, I think it's just important to note that as we hire for teachers, we pay teachers and hire for teachers that have less and less experience. who have less content knowledge, less sophisticated pedagogies, these tools then become the thing that they might lean on more. Someone in software engineering said that AI will turn a 10x engineer into a 100x engineer, but a 0.9 engineer into a 0.1 engineer. That is to say that the more skill you have, it's a multiplier on skill, but for novices, it takes them down significantly.
That's really interesting. I was talking to Lee Gaines, the reporter who's doing a lot on AI in schools. You might have heard her work on NPR, and she came up with a similar image, which was that for the top kids, ed tech and AI could be very, very effective in deepening their learning, motivated with the kids with a foundation of knowledge. But for kids who weren't as strong skill-wise, weren't as motivated for whatever reasons, that it could have an incredibly corrosive, diminishing effect on learning and cognitive endurance, for lack of a better word.
This is what Lawrence Holt found when he did a close review of a lot of efficacy studies that he wrote up as the 5% problem, which indicated like all these studies, many of them that have positive results for student learning, find those by selecting only for students who met these dosage requirements for using the tool, which wound up being about 5% of the students, the same 5% one suspects that could learn from a ham sandwich, basically.
It's not just parents who are concerned about ed tech right now. We've had all these reversals, for lack of a better word, and you mentioned some of them to me. We've got Sal Khan, we've got the American Federation of Teachers. Can you help me understand why everyone's zigging and zagging? Is it political wins? Is it parent anger? Or are people starting to wake up a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to understand this better myself. I think it's one of the most interesting social, cultural, technological stories in education of the last 20 years since I've been in this job. But just the way that people have so badly misunderstood and flip-flopped on this technology over 4 years is something to be studied. Where you have people like Sal Khan, who's an operator in the industry, saying this will be the greatest positive transformation chatbots of all time. And then recently has said, no, this is it was a non-event, the release of this chatbot tutor. Or you have New York City Public Schools, which over the course of 4 years has had a ban and then gone hard as we're going to be a lighthouse district in the world for using this, and now is currently in the midst of another retrenchment. Or you have the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten, and that group, like they formed a partnership, like 20 mil partnership with OpenAI and others to create professional learning for teachers around AI. But then they released this, this kind of like, Bill of Rights for kids or whatever it is, saying, no AI for younger kids. And I do wonder what's up, can we hold an idea in our heads that is like a pedagogical higher order truth that helps us not be so buffeted by the technological forces at play? And your question was a good one. Like, why is this happening? And what makes it hard for the body to maintain its immune system, the schooling body, such that an idea like a kid talking to a chatbot for any amount of time in a day can be seen as, well, that's not going to work. Like, that's not what a tutor is or does or who they are. And I wonder about that. I think a big part of it has to do, just to start one idea out there, with funding and how, the 23 million that OpenAI commits to, and Google commits to the AFT, like Google's a $4 trillion market cap company. Like that's nothing to them, but it's something like 1/10 of the AFT's operating budget. Yeah. That's that kind of, those incentives I can imagine create all kinds of distortions that allow for the immune system to become compromised and these ideas to enter in. And I want to know, how do we help schools, parents, teachers, edtech companies to hold on to truth about what actually works so they are less buffeted by those external forces?
So money, put simply, money may be one of the factors that's going on. I have to think that it's also, and this is me not trying to put words in your mouth, this is just me editorializing. I happen to think also that there's an issue of confidence in traditional methods and approaches. If you've got confidence in how you're doing things, you're less susceptible to crazy ideas or speculative ideas. You can put things in proportion. You're not likely to lunge. And so that part of the psychology, again, this is me projecting, psychologizing the education system, which is probably not a wise thing to do, but I can't help but think that's going on a little bit as well.
Certainly, yeah. I've benefited enormously from having done, graduate work in education and walking away with some pretty firm convictions and ideas about how kids learn best. And it's important to know that as new and powerful as AI is, and I do believe it is powerful, like the human mind and how it learns has been under evolution for much, much, much longer, and it's not going to change at the same pace as new models are released. So any ideas that teachers or researchers or ed tech operators have about how people learn, both cognitively and socially, will create those kinds of immunities and a more sturdiness, stability in how they perceive new technologies.
As you know, the grade is by and for education journalists. It's only recently that I've started talking to non-journalists. My goal is to have news coverage about schools be as accurate and informative and helpful as possible to help policymakers and parents and everyone else make decisions. Do you have any thoughts about the role of the media in helping or hindering this immune system maintain itself?
Yeah, I mean, certainly media, traditional media, all kinds of media are not operating from an abundance of financial resources ever, and so are just as susceptible to those kinds of funding challenges that I described. Where you have the same people who stand to benefit greatly if AI winds up being like an exponential type technology in terms of profit. They also control a lot of media and direct a lot of media resources. They own newspapers. They make grants to novice journalists, and so that in itself we just need to name as a challenge to the media, to journalists, to cover this from the perspective of the people who have zero resources to offer you. Like teachers have no foundation grants. Teachers have no advertising dollars. Students have no advertising dollars to offer you, and they are the people who most need the scrutiny of the education press, of the media.
How are folks doing now? I, for example, have been somewhat pleased that the story seems like it's being taken seriously by the New York Times, by NBC News. There was even an excerpt. You may have known the Sal Khan chatbot story way before, but there was even an excerpt from a book about AI that told me, at least, the story about the unhappy experience that Khan Academy had with its chatbot. Is there any shift or change that you perceive in the media coverage lately?
Yeah, absolutely. There's people doing fantastic work. I call out, Natasha Singer at the New York Times being one of them. I think Education Week has done some very careful methodological work on this issue, surveying the same set of survey questions at no doubt great expense in their research center. Surveying usage using the same longitudinal metrics every year has been just enormously valuable. I do think that all of these outlets have largely they have not been leading the coverage. Like they have more been a lagging indicator. Like
Okay.
You're only starting to see, I think, some of the skepticism about AI in schools, or some of the schools that present themselves as very AI forward. We're now seeing a lot of the skepticism, but only after the parents really kind of came along and said no, not this. Long after, I think, like independent, just weirdos like me were looking into board minutes and writing about those. It takes a while, and I'd love to see those outlets be ahead of the curve and not behind the curve. But I'm glad that they're somewhere on the curve right now, it seems.
They're catching up. Who else besides your Substack, which, as I said at the top, a lot of people have mentioned to me as an important one to read? Who else is out there with a deep understanding and a commitment to grappling with complexities and contradictions? Should I or others be following?
Yeah, I think it's some easy places to go and smash that subscribe button on a Substack. I think Ben Riley covers this from this whole angle from a real sense of what is human cognition, and how does that differ from what large language models offer. Audrey Waters has been she's a lightning rod, and if you're in the ed tech industry for longer than 5 years, she has doubtlessly called you out for being of no help to kids, including myself. But she also has been right way more than she's been wrong about all of this, and I benefit enormously from her perspective. I would grab those two, and if you want some sobriety in your some more immunoglobulins in your body, your ed tech body, I would definitely add them.
When I talk to ed tech people, I talked to Tony Wan the other day, which was a great conversation. I talked to Ty Holmes from iReady the other day, which was also interesting. It's always interesting to talk to people who are being cast as villains and let them say in their own words. I often hear the phrase, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, sort of don't go too far. And I wondered if, first of all, is there, in terms of reconsidering or reckoning or reining in, is there any danger in your understanding of the world? Is there any danger of people pulling back too far, too fast? And if we're trying to preserve the baby but let the bathwater go, what's the baby?
Yeah, the expression really bothers me. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, especially coming from ed tech industry and investors and people who have been part of conflating the baby and bathwater for so long, who have been part of creating an immune system that is so immunocompromised that we can't separate bad from good ideas. And then parent groups say, look, we're not professionals here. We're not researchers. We just know the thing is sick. Like the way the education and technology interact is not working well for our kids. And they come along like a huge dose of chemotherapy, and they're gonna kill a lot of the good cells and the bad cells simultaneously, because ed tech and education has not developed on its own an immune system that works for kids. And so I do think that there's technology has done enormous good and value for me as a teacher and for the teachers we support, primarily by taking very seriously the social and cognitive ways kids learn, not just the cognitive, where so much of education technology treats kids as though they are little individual hard drives in a server rack, separate from each other. And we'll go in there and we'll show them an animation or show them a video or a chatbot, and we'll do a write operation on their little hard drive, and they'll have learned something. But we understand at Amplify that kids are social beings as well, and they learn by talking to each other and with teachers. So that's the baby. That's what parents are into, what kids are into, what teachers are into. And I will keep on repping that wherever I can. But I do understand and sympathize with why parents are taking a really heavy-handed approach towards tech right now. And it's because we have not, as an industry, had a perspective on what works and what doesn't, and rep that more forcefully.
It's funny, you mentioned the role of funding and the vulnerability that both schools and teachers and everyone else have to, journalists have to funding issues. I think that part of the issue has to do with shiny new thing, journalism, curiosity seeking. So among journalists are known for liking shiny new things, and also want to maybe have something to bring to an editor to say, hey, you're sick of all my stories about how schools are inadequate. Here's a shiny new thing that might come along. It's been happening for a long time, I'm afraid, and I worry that the psychology is important. Tony was reminiscing about EdSurge and wishing that there was an EdSurge out there right now. And I had to say to him, hey, EdSurge is part of the reason we got, from my perspective, EdSurge is part of the reason we got here. There was way more hype than skepticism that I remember. I've since been told that there were a couple of funny articles about, who was going to be the Elizabeth Holmes of ed tech. This is the Theranos founder. Maybe there was a little bit of that here and there, but not nearly enough. And I worry about the curiosity factor getting in the way. If you have any thoughts about EdSurge or anything else that I just said, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think that's a real buzz feedification of ed tech journalism, where there's a real appeal to writing the story that's like, there's this one weird trick for, losing 40 pounds or whatever. There's this one weird trick towards managing your finances. There's this one weird trick for helping kids learn difficult material under conditions of extreme poverty and deprivation. No one wants to read the long, sensible trick of funding schools, helping kids have food in their tummies and good rest, that kind of thing. So this one weird trick motif, I think, has predominated a lot of the journalism around AI in the first couple of years after it was invented, LLMs. And now we're kind of after the received wisdom has turned to, yes, LLMs will save us. Now, ed tech journalists can feast on the new one weird trick is that AI will not save us. So there's this impulse to pursue the counterintuitive that I find not particularly helpful, and what is intuitive has changed over the last 4 years.
Right. Let me ask you a couple of last questions. I really appreciate this. Has been so useful to help me and other education journalists out there, or people who are concerned about this issue or interested understand things. Is it overuse of ed tech or underuse that's mostly happening? Usage rates, I've been told, are really low, and yet if I just read headlines and parent essays, it's kids are being doused with tech. Over or under?
Yeah, it's a great question that I wonder about as a parent as well, in public schools that I really admire. I think it's the picture is very complicated. There are some districts where it's like district by district, it varies, right? There's some districts where there are policies that you need to use this or that platform, which kids tend not to like, apparently, for X minutes per day or per week. And that kind of mandate, I think, really rubs people the wrong way, knowing that some large fraction of my kid's limited childhood is being used on this thing. There's others where there isn't such a policy, but there are these very flashy and stunning kind of anecdotes of kids who are watching YouTube videos, and those carry, I think, weight that goes beyond their actual minute count or student usage. And then there's just kind of the ambient way that tech is used sometimes, as in the same way that I think beleaguered parents will use an iPad at a restaurant or on a trip just to pacify a kid. Where in the past, we have a few minutes left in class. What do you do with that? Well, in the past, teachers would, ideally come up with some really, enriching activity on the fly. But at the very least, just kids sitting at their desks and talking to their friends for a couple of minutes to downshift from the main activity of the day is very different than, okay, go on and play, some slop game system or something. So it operates at those levels. There's the district policy that is, we can point to that written down as being objectionable. There's the anecdotal, which carries a ton of weight. And then also this just ambient sense that teachers need to reckon with, that hey, parents see what's going on here. They recognize the impulse and think it's not how kids should engage with technology in the schools.
Excellent. On a similar vein, I've been told that we shouldn't focus on screen time, that we shouldn't that's too basic a metric. We shouldn't focus on devices versus not devices, or even on social media access or ills. Is there a simple but useful metric or focal point that you would, as a parent or as a advisor to education journalists, that you would have people look at when they're looking at a kid's experience or a classroom or a school?
Yeah, I found it very helpful to see some of the audits coming out. There was one, I think, in Cambridge where they looked at like with a real open mind, okay, what are kids doing on all these devices? What web pages? Let's count them up. Let's see. I want the median and average and the mean are those are valuable, but the outliers really do carry a lot of weight. So what are the outliers? There's this one kid that was on YouTube for 6 hours yesterday, and how can we restrict those? That's valuable, but I as much as I love as a lover of math, I love the metrics quantitatively. It's hard to argue with the need for qualitative metrics for a school system to define together, here is what we think technology brings for us, what it should bring for us, to go down to the anecdotal level and see how it's used and talk as a community, do we like this kind of usage? And just with that open-mindedness that I think was embodied by Cambridge recently, we need the qualitative and the quantitative.
Yeah, I like that the audit had been done, and I also liked, frankly, that the Globe or whoever it was picked it up and wrote about the audit. I'd love to see more of that coverage.
Yes.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that's sort of a burning importance or critical importance to helping folks understand the ed tech discussion?
Yeah, I think we've covered so much here. I really just, again, want to reiterate like how much of a kid's success depends on social interactions with humans. For the vast majority of kids, it's possible that journalists, that career professionals, that white collar workers in general are ill equipped to understand the needs of students in schools, their life experiences. And I lump myself in this as well, someone who spends most of his days behind a laptop, who learned very well on his own from a book, who enjoys writing. We just need to understand that kids are very much not like us. And anytime you feel the urge to maybe suppress your history as a student or your disposition towards learning, that will likely pay off dividends as you wonder, like, what is schooling like for kids these days? How do they learn?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I asked education journalists about their own experiences in school because I had the feeling that it was getting in the way. And my theory was that there were a lot of class presidents who had had successful experiences in school. It wasn't entirely that, but it was helpful, I think, as an exercise for people to think, oh, how it was for me, or even how it is for my kids, might be different than other kids in other situations. That's a really important and helpful thing. Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone should go out and subscribe to MathWorlds, your Substack. Please send me any examples of excellent or egregiously bad education journalism that you come across. But most of all, thanks for talking to me today.
Thank you.